After 15 years at Tech Vantage, the restructuring finally arrived. "We're restructuring your position," Marjorie Thompson announced, her voice barely hiding a hint of satisfaction. She sat across from me in the small conference room, with Denise from HR by her side. Both wore carefully crafted expressions of corporate regret. "The company is moving in a new direction," Denise added, sliding a manila folder across the table. I nodded slowly, taking the folder without opening it. Inside was the familiar severance package, 2 weeks' pay for every year served, 3 months health coverage, and a list of career counseling services I knew I'd never use. "I understand," I said calmly. "These decisions are never easy." Relief flickered across their faces. Clearly, they had expected tears, protests, or anger. After all, I was a 55-year-old woman being pushed out of a tech world where youth was valued far more than experience. What they didn't know was that I'd been ready for this moment for weeks, ever since a misdirected email landed in my inbox last month. Marjorie's tone turned colder, likely encouraged by my calm. "Please clean out your desk by Friday. Return your keycard, laptop, and phone. Your team will be informed this afternoon." My team, the 6 brilliant engineers I'd personally recruited and mentored, the very ones who helped me develop the distributed processing algorithm powering Tech Vantage's flagship product, AccountSphere, used by over 40% of Fortune 500 companies. "Of course," I replied smoothly, rising from my chair. "Is there anything else?" They exchanged uneasy glances, thrown by my composure. Marjorie recovered first. "That's all for now. Thank you for keeping this professional." Walking back to my office, I passed the glass-walled conference room where the executive team was meeting. Through the transparent barrier, I spotted CEO Victor Lawson, gesturing animatedly at a PowerPoint slide titled Q3 Revenue Projections. The same Victor Lawson who took credit for my algorithm at last year's industry conference, dismissing me as one of our research team members. I closed my office door and pulled out my personal phone, sending a single text: "It's happening. Friday is my last day." The reply was instant, perfect timing. "Contracts are ready. Dinner tonight to finalize details." I glanced at my desk calendar. It was Wednesday. Friday, I'd leave Tech Vantage for the last time. Monday would be something else entirely. That evening, I met Gregory Sullivan at Meridian, an upscale restaurant far from Tech Vantage's headquarters. Gregory, CEO of Precision Systems, Tech Vantage's biggest rival, understood the value of discretion. He reserved a private dining alcove shielded by elegant Japanese screens. "They actually did it," Greg said, shaking his head as we ordered. "Cut the very person who created their core technology." Victor never understood what I actually built, I said, sipping my water. He saw only the interface, the marketing potential, the superficial stuff. The real innovation was invisible to him. The irony was delicious. 3 months ago, I discovered that Tech Vantage's legal team had never filed a patent application for my distributed processing algorithm. "An oversight," they said. When I pressed, they assured me it was being handled immediately. But something felt off. So I dug into the company's internal documents. That's when I found the strategy memo. Tech Vantage planned to claim the algorithm as company-developed technology without naming me as the inventor. They intended to push me out before securing the patent, knowing the intellectual property would belong to the company if created during employment. What they didn't know was that I had been quietly refining the algorithm on my own time, using my personal equipment. These improvements increased processing efficiency by 43%, and weren't covered by my employment contract. I filed for the patent under my own name last month, with detailed logs proving the work was done outside company hours. Thanks to Greg's introduction to a top IP attorney, the patent was granted faster than I expected. That morning, dressed in a sharp charcoal suit, the power outfit I had saved for today, the Precision Systems town car arrived at 7:30 a.m. to take me to my first day as their new Chief Innovation Officer. Greg told me the press release went live at 7 a.m. Settling into my corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows and a sweeping city view, Greg updated me on the buzz. Industry newsletters were already lighting up. The announcement was crafted perfectly. Precision Systems acquires exclusive rights to a revolutionary processing algorithm and proudly welcomes its creator, Dr. Jennings, as Chief Innovation Officer. It highlighted my sole inventorship, detailed the integration of the tech into next-gen products, and made clear that any company using the algorithm now needed to negotiate licenses with Precision Systems. At 9:15 a.m., a message popped up from Miguel, my lead developer still at Tech Vantage. Complete chaos here. What did you do? I smiled and replied quickly. Check your personal emails. All 6 of you have offers waiting 8 miles away at Tech Vantage headquarters. What should have been a routine Monday morning leadership meeting had turned into a crisis. Miguel's play-by-play texts kept me posted. Victor showed up to find the general counsel and CFO waiting anxiously outside his office. The announcement had arrived in their inboxes simultaneously, triggering alarms. By 9:30, the weekly leadership meeting became an emergency session. Board members dialed in remotely. Legal teams combed through contracts and development files. Research servers were taken for urgent review. I pictured Victor pacing the glass conference room, demanding answers from Marjorie and legal. Investor confidence was slipping fast. Stocks hate uncertainty, and this news was pure chaos. At 10:45, an email from Victor appeared. On my screen, desperation dripping from every word. Kira, there appears to be a misunderstanding. Please call me at your earliest convenience. Without hesitation, I forwarded it to Precision Systems' legal team. By noon, the tech world was buzzing. Tech Vantage's stock dropped 7% since opening, while Precision Systems surged 12%. 3 major tech journals requested interviews, eager to cover the strategic upheaval shaking the accounting software industry. Greg slid a folder across the table. All paperwork's finalized. Once you sign, Precision Systems officially acquires exclusive licensing rights. The press release goes out Monday morning. I reviewed the documents, though I'd memorized the key points already. A 7-figure signing bonus, substantial equity, and ongoing royalties from every product using my algorithm. What do you think Victor's face will look like when he realizes what's happened? Greg asked, a triumphant smile breaking across his face. I smiled back, ready for the next chapter quietly. Riley, my main concern is my team. They don't deserve to be caught up in this. Greg nodded, already taken care of. We have senior roles lined up for all 6 of them, with significant raises, if they're interested. I signed the final page and closed the folder with deliberate calm. My future was secured, my team protected, and my work finally acknowledged. Greg raised his glass. To new beginnings, he said. I met his toast with a simple clink. To owning your own value. Thursday and Friday passed quickly, a blur of exit interviews, knowledge transfers, and goodbyes. I kept my composure even as rumors swept through the company. Administrative assistants offered sympathetic looks in the hallways. Junior developers approached hesitantly, asking for LinkedIn recommendations. I documented everything. Meticulously, every project detail, every password, every process, fully aware that Tech Vantage would soon realize how thorough I'd been. My detailed transition notes weren't an act of kindness, they were evidence. Evidence that I had acted in good faith, unlike the company. During my final exit interview Friday afternoon, Denise from HR went through the motions. You understand that any intellectual property developed during your employment remains the company's property, she said, sliding a non-disclosure agreement across the table. Of course, I replied smoothly, making sure to emphasize the qualifications, anything developed within the scope of my employment, using company resources during company time. Denise, busy ticking boxes, didn't catch the nuance. And you affirm you have no copies of proprietary information? I've taken nothing that belongs to Tech Vantage, I said honestly. The patent was mine, after all. As I packed my personal items, family photos, conference badges from 15 years of events, the coffee mug my team gave me last Christmas, Marjorie stopped by. She leaned against the doorframe, trying for casual. Just wanted to check everything's clear for your departure, she said, watching me fold the small award I'd received for the very algorithm now at the center of my plans. Crystal clear, I said, a faint irony in my voice. You know, Kira, these restructuring decisions are never personal, she said. Victor thinks the company needs to move in a younger direction. I looked her in the eye. I understand completely. Business is business. Something in my tone made her hesitate briefly before she brushed it off. What could a soon-to-be unemployed 55-year-old woman possibly do, she scoffed. Will you be taking some time off, she asked, feigning concern. Actually, I already have something lined up, I replied. I start Monday. Surprise crossed her face. That's quick. Anything interesting? I smiled. Faintly. A leadership position. I'm looking forward to it. She nodded absently and moved on. Walking out of Tech Vantage's glass headquarters for the last time, key card surrendered and belongings in hand, I paused and looked back at the building where I'd spent 15 years. On the top floor, the executive conference room was lit for an evening meeting, likely discussing how to redistribute my responsibilities among younger, less experienced, and far less costly staff. Little did they know that in less than 72 hours, that same room would host an emergency crisis meeting. Monday morning arrived bright and clear. How are you feeling? Craig asked when he stopped by my office. Validated, I answered honestly. 15 years of watching others claim credit for my work, being told to be grateful just to have a seat at the table, and now finally, recognition. My executive assistant interrupted. The development team is ready for your first meeting. By the way, Tech Vantage's CEO has called 4 times this morning. Should I tell him you're unavailable? I'm booked all day, I said calmly. Our legal team will reach out about licensing later this week. As I headed to the conference room, Miguel's texts kept coming. Board just called emergency session. Victor looks like he's about to explode. P.S. My team and I accept your offer. When can we start? Tuesday morning, I texted back, today. The full impact of my departure was sinking in. Tech Vantage's flagship product, Account Sphere, depended entirely on my algorithm to process massive datasets, the secret sauce giving it its edge. Without licensing rights, Tech Vantage faced 2 grim options: negotiate with Precision Systems or rebuild from scratch, a costly, years-long project. At 2 p.m., Miguel sent a report on Victor's all-hands meeting. The CEO tried to project confidence. promising to defend their intellectual property vigorously, but anxiety was palpable. Several employees had already updated their LinkedIn profiles. When asked about the missing patent, Marjorie looked pale. Victor abruptly ended the session. By Wednesday, the industry fallout was accelerating. 2 major clients contacted Precision Systems, worried about Tech Vantage's ability to maintain account sphere without me. Our stock rose another 8%, while theirs continued to fall. That afternoon, Denise from HR called, the same woman who handed me my severance days before. Kira, I'm calling about your patent. We believe there may be a misunderstanding about ownership rights. I stayed calm. There's no misunderstanding. My employment agreement clearly states intellectual property developed on my own time, with my own resources, remains mine. The patent documentation confirms this. She added cautiously, Victor hopes you might consider coming in to discuss options. Any talks will need to go through Precision Systems' legal team. I replied smoothly, and the silence on the other end said, plenty. That afternoon, I gave my first formal presentation to the Precision Systems board. Standing confidently at the head of the table, not hidden away like I had been at Tech Vantage, I outlined our technology roadmap. Greg's approving nod reassured me quietly. By Friday, a week after my last day at Tech Vantage, the company was in full crisis. Their stock had fallen 23% since Monday's open, sparking urgent calls from major investors. Analysts published speculative articles with headlines like, Can Tech Vantage survive without Jennings' algorithm? For the first time in 15 years, I was no longer invisible. I was in control. Through industry contacts, I learned Victor had finally acknowledged the severity of the situation. Tech Vantage faced 2 bleak choices: license my algorithm from Precision Systems, likely at crippling rates, or rebuild account sphere without the patented technology. They'd begun interviewing new development teams. Miguel told me during a Friday video call, when we discussed his transition to Precision Systems, that Victor claimed they could recreate the algorithm's functionality in 6 months. I couldn't help but smile. The original algorithm took me 3 years to perfect. With intimate knowledge of the problem space agreed. No one's buying that timeline, especially after your entire team resign. All at once. The knowledge drain is massive. That afternoon, Tech Vantage's attorneys finally reached out to Precision Systems to begin licensing negotiations. Our legal team responded with terms that were technically fair but strategically harsh, 3 times the industry standard licensing fee, plus a public acknowledgement of my role as the algorithm's inventor. Greg predicted, they'll balk at the acknowledgement more than the cost. Victor's ego won't let him admit he pushed out the creator of their core technology. Then they'll have to rebuild, I added. And every day they spend trying to replicate my work is another day we extend our lead. The following Monday, just 10 days after my dismissal, I led my first meeting with the newly formed innovation team, including Miguel and the 5 engineers who had left Tech Vantage with me. The energy was palpable as we mapped out the next evolution of the algorithm. This is how development meetings should be, Anita, one of my former team members, remarked. At Tech Vantage, we spent half our time explaining basics to executives who didn't listen. That's the difference between being valued and being seen as replaceable, I replied. Here, your expertise is recognized. As the session concluded, my assistant appeared. Dr. Jennings, there's been a significant development at Tech Vantage. The board just announced an emergency leadership change. Victor Lawson is stepping down immediately. News spread quickly. Industry publications reported that Tech Vantage's board had lost confidence in Victor's leadership after the patent Oversight jeopardized their flagship product. Marjorie Thompson and the head of legal, both responsible for the patent failure, were also out. That evening, I received an email from Richard Donovan, Tech Vantage's new interim CEO. Unlike Victor's desperate messages from the previous week, this was straightforward and respectful. Dr. Jennings, congratulations on your new position. I have been brought in to help Tech Vantage navigate this situation. I would like to discuss a fair licensing arrangement for your patented technology. We are prepared to acknowledge your contributions publicly and make amends for prior management's oversights. Would you be available to meet next week? I forwarded the email to Greg with a brief note. Phase 1 complete. His reply came swiftly, beautifully executed. The board is celebrating your first major victory for precision systems. Looks like Tech Vantage is finally learning an expensive lesson about valuing innovation and innovators. 3 months after leaving Tech Vantage, I sat on stage at the National Technology Innovation Conference, preparing to deliver the keynote. The audience was packed with industry leaders, journalists, and aspiring developers, many familiar with my story. The conference organizer introduced me. Please welcome Dr. Kira Jennings, Chief Innovation Officer at Precision Systems and creator of the distributed processing algorithm revolutionizing data handling across multiple industries. The applause was steady as I stepped to the podium. What a difference a few months make. Last year, I'd been relegated to the back of this very conference as part of the Tech Vantage delegation while Victor presented. Thank you, I began, scanning the attentive faces. Today, I want to talk about innovation, ownership, and the critical importance of valuing intellectual contributions, wherever they come from. My presentation detailed the technical breakthroughs of the algorithm but also addressed broader issues of recognition and respect in technology, without naming Tech Vantage. I emphasized the necessity for companies to protect innovators rather than treating them as replaceable resources. Afterwards, several young women engineers approached me seeking advice and mentorship. One, barely 30, confided, "Your story changed how I document my work. I started keeping detailed logs on my personal time." Smart, I said. Your innovations deserve protection. As the evening wound down, an industry alert flashed on my phone. Tech Vantage had finally announced a licensing agreement with Precision Systems, publicly acknowledging me as the algorithm's creator. Their stock stabilized, though at a significantly lower valuation than before my departure. 1 year to the day after being told to clean out my desk, I sat in my spacious Precision Systems office reviewing the quarterly innovation report. Under my leadership, the company had released 3 groundbreaking products based on my algorithm, capturing significant market share from Tech Vantage and others. A knock interrupted me. Greg entered, carrying a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. "Happy anniversary," he said, setting the glasses down. "The board wanted me to share this news with you first. Precision Systems has officially surpassed Tech Vantage in market valuation for the first time." I smiled, feeling quiet satisfaction. "That's what happens when you value innovation properly," Greg said, pouring the champagne. My assistant then delivered a sleek envelope, an invitation to speak at the Women in Technology Annual Leadership Summit on owning your intellectual value, how proper documentation changed an industry. "You've become something of an icon," Greg noted, glancing at the invitation. The story of the executive who wasn't recognized until her worth was gone had become a cautionary tale in corporate boardrooms. Richard Donovan, who remained Tech Vantage's CEO after the crisis, implemented sweeping reforms to recognize and reward innovation. Their new IP policies reportedly modeled after the program I had established at Precision Systems. It was never about revenge, I said, raising my glass. It was about recognition. Showing the industry that innovation isn't anonymous. It comes from real people who deserve real credit. Greg clinked his glass with mine. As the afternoon sun streamed through my office windows, I reflected on the journey. At 56, I had finally found what had eluded me for years, not just success, but acknowledgement. My name was now permanently attached to the algorithm that changed an industry exactly where it belonged.